think you have demonstrated the importance of really maximizing impact. I mean, three things really stood out. Number one, how do you actually increase your impact? Number two, the power of scaling. I really like that. And number three, being able to take and manage risk. I'm sure whatever that you've shared is not just relevant in the venture capital world, but these three principles will also be very relevant for people who are also working in companies. Because the key thing is, how do they then show these three things and help their companies benefit from a much wider impact? Do you think that there is one quality that a leader should have that would really make a difference in that person's success, especially in the corporate setting?
I have never worked in corporate settings, so let me actually start with that caveat. I generally believe that if you have to survive and scale and build things up, one of the things that you can do is never be satisfied with the most audacious goals, because what you would realize is there is somebody else coming up with a more audacious goal some point of time. Some young kid sitting in some extraordinary corner. If you just have a look at the top 20 companies by market capitalization right now, you would realize that almost 17 of them would actually did not exist probably a decade and a half back. That tells you that the longevity of you being at the top in the corporate space is getting shorter and shorter. And you as a leader have to look at a new goal and a new way of coming and taking things forward. Chances are you may not have that idea, and you might have to look out and meet more people. One of the things that I have actually noticed in the corporate spaces, people are actually very focused towards what their tasks are and not necessarily looking at the world. I work very closely with Paul Polman, the Unilever CEO, and one thing that stands out in my interactions with him is he's actually less concerned about Unilever's balance sheet, but more the role that Unilever is playing in influencing the world to be a more sustainable place. Something that probably reinforces and helps Unilever actually do better and better as time moves by. I think that's actually something, probably if I have to learn something or convey something to people in the corporate ladder, I would say that you need to actually look beyond your task, look probably beyond your company, look at the world as a whole and see if you are able to leverage your strategic position to make world a better place using your company as a leverage. And that alignment might make you a standout leader.
And it is true that when we look at companies that have gone the distance, companies that have been around for hundreds of years, now the key difference is that they have played a pivotal role in society. Strongest business fulfill a societal benefit. And if I were to ask you, how do you then, because what is it that you do on a daily basis, or do you have a particular habit or action you take that allows you to re-energize yourself?
I think there are two things that I actually keep telling everybody. One, I don't take myself very seriously. One of the things that I have realized is that most of us actually look at ourselves so seriously that we forget that we are the most dispensable commodity in this world. You are here, everybody will be running around you, really living to actually take care of your needs, your thoughts, your etc. You will start believing that without me, the company won't run, the department won't run, the place won't run. But next moment you fall sick, you are gone, somebody else will replace you before you actually can blink an eye. And that's the reality of our existence. The only truth that this world has, that all of us are going to die. But none of us want to believe that we are going to die. And that's essentially, I believe, is actually the biggest dichotomy that we deal with ourselves every day. I actually believe I'm the most dispensable guy. I actually also know that we are actually playing a game. Life is nothing more than a game. There is a big saying in Gita that focus on what you can do and leave the outcome or the fruit to the efforts that you have put in. You can't control the fruit, so focus on actually putting the seed in the ground and keep watering it till it becomes a plant and gives out. So seeing everything as a game, playing it to the extent you can, and then enjoying the fruit. It may actually not be very sweet, but enjoy it because it's your fruit itself. And that's what I do.
That's why life seems to be so sweet and meaningful for you. I personally like the guitar. The book has really had so much wisdom inside. And it also reminds us that, you know, very often we focus too much on the results, but instead focus on the actions that we can take, because we are responsible for the action, but not the results. And I think that helps us to just get up no matter what happens and start all over, try something different, and not be afraid of failure. Now, so I'm going to ask you the failure question, because for somebody who treats life as a game, for somebody who has an audacious goal, you will have taken risks that may have backfired, that have allowed you to really have massive failures. So can you share with me what do you consider one of your biggest failures, and how did you overcome that?
I think the first time I actually came across failure was when I couldn't join Indian Army. It was probably the biggest letdown of my life. I actually asked myself this question, why did I not get through? And the only answer I could get is probably because I didn't deserve it. And so accepting your limitation was what my first failure taught me. That if you can't do it, it's not because you are not good at what you know. You are probably not good for what they are seeking from you. And that's how I actually deal with all my failures. We have made investments which have bombed, failed. I take great pride in actually making selections of entrepreneurs. Sometimes they let you down. But that doesn't mean that I actually don't know how to select good entrepreneurs. It's just that circumstances change. And when circumstances change, things go wrong. And if things go wrong, we are taking financial bets, and those bets will go away. But getting panicky about it, putting undue pressure on the entrepreneurs, or actually getting upset about it is not necessarily it's going to make things better. So at that point of time, take a deep breath, ask yourself, did anybody force you to be in the business that you are in? Nobody forced me to actually be an impact investor. And if things go wrong, and if I'm not as successful as some other people are, you have to just clap for them. You have to feel proud of what they have achieved, and also take great pride in where you are with your limitations, with your abilities, and accepting your limitations probably makes you feel better about the failures that you come across. Because for every failure that you have, you might have two successes. Just that you are so focused on the failure, you might not acknowledge your success. So I actually, every time I fail, I look for the successes. As my wife calls it, I have this great ability to look for the silver lining in the darkest of clouds. And I'm always happy because I see that small silver lining. And to me, the dark clouds don't matter till the time I can figure out that silver lining.
It's whatever that we are focused on, we will find, and that's the interesting thing. So that's why I can see that, you know, you're somebody who looks at the positives no matter how dark it is. That is a milestone, a very visible trait of any entrepreneur, any person who has an audacious goal, because that's what keeps you going. So you have talked about the $1 billion goal. Is there another compelling, audacious goal that you've set your sights on?
Well, actually, the $1 billion, we are already there. I think it's just a matter of 6 months, 8 months. What we are trying to do, though, is actually convert the whole group, which started with an idea of taking capital and taking talent to India's hinterland. We are trying to expand across Asia and Africa. And to make that happen over the next 8 years, we are trying to reach $10 billion of assets under management. So it's a 10x goal over next 8 years. Also become a premier mass market or low income market diversified financial institution that actually focuses only on low income people. So these are the two big ambitions. I think the second ambition is far more challenging than the first, because meeting numbers is actually easy. Meeting those numbers with the constraint of not expanding beyond the low income community is actually an audacious one. Partly because if I succeed in my goal, that is make every poor person rich, my $10 billion business may not exist at all, because then my client system would have gone away. But anybody who is actually working in the space of impact, you have to actually believe that at some point of time, your customer will vanish and must vanish, because that's the goal we have given ourselves. So yes, in terms of targets, I want to be managing $10 billion in assets. And my other target is actually to do this while serving the low income population. And hopefully, at some point of time in my life, in my history, we won't have that customer left. They all became rich. And in that case, our business may not have any reason to exist. But that's, to me, is therefore ambitious and an audacious goal. Hopefully, sustainable development goals talk about no poverty, no hunger by 2030. Maybe I'll be able to reach my goal and shut down my company by 2030 as well.
We hope that you're able to achieve that as well. Can you just share one thing that perhaps is a note of optimism? I mean, why you believe that your goal is possible in terms of bridging the gap?
I think India is probably one of the largest percentage of the global challenge if it comes to the income difference. We have probably one of the most stark income difference anywhere in the world. The reason I am very positive is we as a country have been able to take the maximum number of people out of poverty in a very short period of time over the last decade. It's just an extraordinary achievement that has been done by the entrepreneurial ecosystem, as well as using technology and finance to bringing this all together. So in India, what has happened is that in last decade, we have taken and reduced our poverty. Probably we are roughly now 20% of India is actually living below poverty lines. And we are hopeful that over next 10 years, not only will we pull this section of the population above the poverty line, but we will be able to build a social infrastructure that can hold them where they are, that means above the poverty line, and hopefully push them out of it. That itself gives me the biggest hope that if we can do this in India, which actually houses the largest number of poor in the world, most likely we should be able to pull other countries and hopefully offer a sort of a paradigm that developed countries like United States, which is facing a fairly significant gap between those who are homeless, those who do not have places to go, and Europe, which is actually also seeing a significant influx and a slowing economy, can adopt over a period of time.
What you just mentioned is that no problem is too difficult to solve. Literally, it starts with an audacious goal and ensuring that, you know, when people put their strengths together, we are able to scale up. So, I mean, thanks for just helping us to see the big vision you have. And I think it applies to a lot of areas as well. So Vineet, if you had to share one last thing to our Summit audience, the Rise to the Ranks audience, what would your one last message be?
I think one last message be that one of the things that we can all do is make the world a better place to live in. There are many different ways you can contribute. It is not necessary for you to change what you are doing, but if you actually can start looking out for people, be a cheerleader for them who are trying to work with those who are in difficult situations, you may make a huge difference with just an acknowledgement, just saying thank you, just being grateful to those people. You can make a huge difference and also give enough impetus for those guys to continue working on the hard path for their own lifetime. Each one of you can contribute. Please do so if you can.
Thank you, Vineet. I think your message about how we can maximize impact starts from within. Just changing the way that we see the world, believing that things are possible because things are. And that is a great mantra for our lives. So thank you, Vineet, once again for coming on board, sharing with us your audacious story. I've learned an incredible perspective just from listening to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And to our Summit audience, stay awesome, and here's to maximizing your impact.